Hello, everybody. My name is Nick Bruno with Litify. First of all, I want to thank all of you. I want to thank Themis. We've been sponsors for 2 years now. Know many of you personally, but definitely looking forward to being here for several more. So thanks for your gracious hospitality. It's been great. So for those of you that don't know about Litify, put the notepads down. I'm going to email you everything you need to know as soon as this is over. That's a joke. I'm not going to do that. Where's Mitchell? I'm not going to do that. But Litify, we're an all-in-one legal case management platform. So, what does all-in-one mean? Things like time and billing and accounting, case and document management, all run from one central location. But that's not really that neat. What the secret sauce is really all about is because all those things are done in one spot, the defense firms, I think, that are using Litify would tell you they are taking advantage of significant cost savings. And more importantly, especially if we were in one of the panels earlier, more importantly, improving in a metric-based, collaborative way, improving relationships, with their carriers. So if anybody wants to learn more about that, I'll be at the bar in a little bit. But that's not why we're here. We all flew down to Miami for one reason, and that is to hear our illustrious keynote speaker today. So without further delay and with great excitement, it's my pleasure to welcome Frank Abagnale. Thanks, Frank.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have all of you this afternoon. I'm going to take you through a very fast-paced program, cover a lot of subjects in a very short period of time. I will open it up for Q&A. At the end, you can ask any questions that you'd like. I'd like to provide you information about protecting your firm, protecting your clients, protecting your family, and protecting your children as well. And we'll take you through the program and do just that. I have been teaching at the FBI Academy for over 4 decades. I've taught 2 generations of FBI agents and have conducted more than 3,000 seminars around the world on financial crimes, embezzlement, check forgery, counterfeiting, identity theft, cybercrime, etc. But I've always lived on one very simple philosophy from day one, which is my same philosophy today, based on 3 points, and that, of course, is prevention, verification, and education. Prevention, because once you lose your money, you will probably never get your money back. They may convict the person, they may send them to jail for 10 years, but most likely you will never get your money back. At the close of 2022, there was $110 billion of court-ordered restitution outstanding from federal, state, county, city courts. 91% of that will never be collected. This is why prevention is so very important today before you ever lose your money. Verification, because today anything can be replicated, duplicated, counterfeited, deep fake. So before you part with any money or you part with any information, you absolutely need to know who's on the other end of that device. And finally, education. Education is the most powerful tool to fighting crime. If I can explain the scam to you, show you how it works, you understand it, you will not fall victim to that scam. And of course, all the money that goes out, billions of dollars to all types of crimes, does come back to our society in a boomerang, and it comes back, unfortunately, in the form of narcotics, weapons, terrorism, human trafficking, child pornography. So even if we put a small dent in white-collar crime, we save a lot of human misery in doing so. I've written 3 books on identity theft. I started writing about identity theft in the mid-1980s, before very few people were talking about it. There were people who committed the crime, but it took a lot of time, a lot of research, a lot of legwork. So basically, criminals are lazy, so there were very few people who did it. That all changed with technology, and today it is a very simple crime. And today, during the pandemic, we saw that crime increase by more than 73% in this country, and still today, one of the most popular crimes, identity theft. A victim in the US every 2 seconds. Worldwide, in 2018, there were 3.6 billion identity records that had been compromised. More than 14 billion identity records are on the dark web today, which means that everyone in this room, including myself, has probably already had their identity stolen, their personal data taken. It's a question of would they ever use your information. If we go back to breaches, and we go back to, say, 06, and we always, 04, excuse me, we do them in lots of 6 years. That's when we first started seeing those breaches. And in that first 6 years, until 09, we started to see the size of the companies, the corporations, the financial institutions, the government agencies. And when we moved into the next segment of breaches up to 2016, bigger companies, larger breaches, more data, more information that was stolen, to where we are today with Marriott Hotels, Capital One Bank, Twitter, Facebook, and the breaches that occur every day that we know nothing about or that are never reported. During the pandemic, just during that short 2 years, there were more breaches than all the breaches put together during that time. Now, I make my home in Charleston, South Carolina. About several years ago, someone hacked into our state tax revenue office, and they stole 3.8 million tax returns of the citizens of South Carolina. That's everyone, including myself. Now, they stole the entire physical return, which meant they had your Social Security number, your wife's Social Security number, you list your children as dependents, they had your children's Social Security number, and they had your earnings. At the time the incident occurred, the State Commissioner of Revenue said, we did absolutely nothing wrong at our agency. My response was, that would be absolutely, literally impossible. Every single breach, every breach occurs because someone in that company did something they weren't supposed to do, or somebody in that company failed to do something they were supposed to do. Hackers do not cause breaches. People do. All hackers do is look for open doors, opportunities, and there are millions of them. In case of South Carolina, a contractor took home a laptop he wasn't supposed to take home from the agency, opened it in an unsecure environment, the hacker got in, stole 3.8 million tax returns. Our governor at the time was Nikki Haley. She ordered every citizen in the state be provided 1 year credit monitoring service. The state would pick up the fee. I didn't know the governor, but I sent her an email and told her that would be a waste of the taxpayers' money and a waste of the taxpayers' time. People who steal mass data warehouse that data typically for 3 to 4 years before they ever put it back into the marketplace. So 1 year of credit monitoring, 2 years of credit monitoring, 3 years of credit monitoring, basically worthless. The governor turned around and gave the citizens of South Carolina 6 years of credit monitoring, which did a lot to put down a lot of fraud that would have occurred. When we go to the dark web, we look at the prices of information being sold in 2023. Each one of these pieces of identity have a price tag on the dark web, and this is what they sell for. And when you can take trillions of pieces of information and put it together and sell it around the world, it becomes very, very valuable to the people who do just that. I don't like to use old slides in my deck. It's the only one I keep. It's from 2012. It is a study done by Carnegie Mellon, who took 3 years to complete the study. They went to 50 states to interview over 40,000 children under the age of 18 years of age, to ask the child, the parent, or the guardian if the child had had their identity stolen. After the 3 years, they published their report, and more than 10% of those children had already had their identity stolen. God only knows what that number is today. There is no better victim than a child. So if you go to the dark web and you see an identity being sold of a 62-year-old multi-millionaire in Pittsburgh who owns shopping malls, office complexes, hotels, and all of his data is available for sale, and you look at the price, then you slide over and you look at a 14-year-old boy in Pittsburgh who's in junior high school, and look at that price, 2 or 3 times that price. And if you slide over one more time to the infant that came out of the hospital 2 weeks ago with a Social Security number and a date of birth, that'd be 5 times that price. Because if I could become that 14-year-old boy, I can be that 14-year-old boy for the next 6 or 7 years before anyone ever knows I stole that child's identity. And if I could steal that infant's identity, I might have 18, 20 years to use that identity, resell that identity over and over before anyone's ever aware that I stole that identity. In all of my books, I wrote about my concerns about children's identity theft, but only in recent years did the Wall Street Journal and other publications start to recognize that children's identity theft has become a major, major problem. In the old days, there were public records, these, still public records today. So in the old days, you went down to the County Bureau of Vital Records and you got a copy of a death certificate. Then you literally crossed the hall and went over and got a copy of that person's birth certificates because counties didn't crisscross deaths. Once you had the birth certificate, you went down to the motor vehicle department and you applied for a driver's license. Once you had the driver's license, you went to the bank and you opened an account. Once you had the account, you applied for a credit card, and so on. But that took a lot of time, a lot of legwork, a lot of research. The difference today is I can do the same thing in my apartment with a cup of coffee and my pajamas and my laptop in India, China, Russia in approximately 6 to 7 minutes. Technology breeds crime. It always has. It always will. And there will always be people willing to use technology in a negative, self-serving way. Ransomware, we had 2,500 cases of ransomware, up 66%, and businesses in America paid out more than $300 million in cryptocurrency. It's very simple. As long as there's cryptocurrency, there'll be ransomware. You can't have ransomware if cryptocurrency didn't exist. So as long as cryptocurrency exists, there will be ransomware. Back in 2014, in Atlantic Magazine, an October issue, they asked me what was the biggest scam, 2014, in my opinion. My answer was Bitcoin. My response was, Bitcoin will make you the target of hackers who will steal your money, more expensive than other forms of payment. Bitcoin is a way to rob people of their life savings. Most important, if something goes wrong, they may never be recovered. So far, we've closed over 200 exchanges for fraud. People have been hacked into. Majority of people said I went to bed with $35,000 in Bitcoin and woke up with nothing and nowhere to go to do anything about it. Obviously, it is extremely risky. It's a way for criminals to move money around the world. And of course, someday we'll have to be regulated. And someday we will go to a digital currency, but it will have to be regulated. In the meantime, there are a lot of things that will have to be worked out about privacy, etc., before we ever get to that point. I probably looked at over 30,000 phishing emails during my lifetime. I used to teach it at the academy years ago. I would talk about the Nigerian letter, and the agents would say, well, how did they send out 10,000 letters? What about the postage? Well, all the postage stamps were counterfeit, so it didn't cost them anything to send out the letters. And they were looking for a 0.1% return and getting a response. The difference today is, of course, emails and texts and many other forms of communication. So up until a couple years ago, you could look at a phishing email and you'd see that it's poor grammar, misspelling, misdirection. You could detect it. Not so much anymore. So I would like to share just two with you. They're recent, one involving a consumer, one involving a U.S. corporation. Ironically, the corporation is a technology company in Southern California. They employ about 4,000 employees. It is supposedly an email from the CEO to the CFO of the company. And it simply reads as follows. Good morning, Jeff. A wonderful dinner at your home last night. Please thank your wife, Helen. My wife, Susan, and I truly enjoyed your company. As I mentioned to you over dinner, I'm traveling this week to Nashville, Tennessee to attend a conference. I'll be out of the office till next Monday. I forgot to mention to you over the dinner that I need you to wire these funds to our client this morning. I promised they'd have them by 11 a.m. Please take care of it. Here's the information. Well, there's a picture of the CEO on Facebook and his wife and his children and their names. There's a picture of the CFO on Facebook, his wife, his children, their names. He already said he was going to Nashville, Tennessee 3 months earlier when he registered to attend the conference and said he'd be there for the entire week. They're taking information from social media and converting it into a phishing email in real time. The other one was simply a young lady in Washington, D.C. that simply said, "Hi, Barbara, great having lunch with you today. We need to do that more often. I hope you, Randy, and the kids have a good time at Disney World this week. When you get back, give me a call. We'll do lunch again. By the way, I saw this on YouTube, thought you'd enjoy it. Here's the link, signed Joan. She already has a picture of her husband and children on Facebook. She already said they were going to Disney World. She said she was going to lunch, was there, took a picture at lunch with her friend. They're taking information in real time and converting that to an email, a very convincing email. And after all, phishing emails are nothing but social engineering. And the one thing we do know is there is no technology, there never will be any technology, including AI, that can defeat social engineering. You can only defeat social engineering through education. You have to educate the individual that they're about to be socially engineered. So that when I call the bank's call center, or they call me, the ability to turn the conversation so I'm gathering information rather than getting information without the proper training is a very simple thing to do. But people are basically honest, and because they're honest, they don't have a deceptive mind, so they have no understanding that they're being socially engineered. You have to teach people about social engineering so they can spot and detect when they're about to be socially engineered, whether through an email or whether through a text message or whether through simply a conversation on the telephone. And that's where education plays a very, very important part. I could go in any Fortune 100, Fortune 500, Frank's Plumbing Shop in Miami with 12 employees, I will find the same soft spots. I can go into any company in America, no matter how big or how small, on any floor in their building and find nothing but soft spots on every floor. Access points, weak spots. That's all that hackers do, is simply look for those weak spots, opportunities. They're not looking for challenges, they're looking for opportunities, and there's millions of them. And what about your home? What about that device you pick up and go to Netflix? What about that device you talk to in the morning and say, what's on TV tonight? Order me this from Amazon. Refrigerator tells you how much milk is in. Thermostat you control while you're away. Your iPhone that you open so you can look at your property, you have cameras around your house, see what's going on your property. Those are all weak points, open doors for hackers. I can turn that device in your house so I hear every single thing going on in your conversation. God forbid you're discussing a case. God forbid you have cameras in your house, because I can flip them, see what's in your house. You see, the problem is we build a lot of technology in this country, both in the commercial side and the consumer side, but we never vet it. We're so quick to get it to market for return on investment. The marketing people say, I've got to have this out by Christmas. No one ever stops to say, wait, how would someone misuse this technology? Where is the weak point in this technology? We never ask that question. And consequently, most of the technology out there is easily defeated. Now, there is no foolproof system, and if you believe you have a foolproof system, you have failed to take into consideration the creativity of fools. But I can make something so difficult by asking you to move the Empire State Building over 2 blocks in 2 days. And when we build good security, that's exactly what we do. And we go back constantly to review it to make sure it's as good as that day as it was last week. But there are very few people doing that, and we're going to have to do a much better job with our technology. The federal government is using technology from back in the 70s. We're going to have to do a much better job of doing that and doing it well if we're going to protect our information. I hate passwords. Every book I wrote, I close with the line, I hate passwords. Passwords are for tree houses. They were invented in 1964 when I was 16 years old. I didn't even do the things I did yet. And this April, I'll be 75 years old, and we are still using passwords. How is that possible? When we know for a fact that 63% of network intrusions are compromised user passwords. Colonial Pipeline shut down the whole Northeast to compromise password. 81% of hacking-related breaches involve a weak or a stolen password. And every second of every day, 579 password attacks, 18 billion a year. Why are we still using passwords? If we were to take the 3 largest banks in America, just the 3, 1, 2, and 3, those 3 banks combined spend over $100 million a year resetting passwords in their call center at $70 a reset. $100 million a year resetting passwords. And we already know that people who use a password for Amazon use the same password for their bank account and everything else. I'm happy to tell you that passwords are going away. We would be there right now had it not been for COVID, which put that technology back about 3 years. But it's here. And that technology is called a passkey. Now, passkeys have been around for a few years as they've been vetted by financial institutions and corporations and technology companies. But you may have seen an ad recently with Sabrina Williams. She's running through the marketplace. She's in her jogging outfit. And the only thing in her possession is her phone. She has no pockets. As she sees a necklace in the market she wants to buy, she walks over to a Chase ATM. She takes her phone and presses the bank's app. She gets her money. No card, no password, and she physically never touched the screen. That's a passkey. At the end of November of 2022, Microsoft, as well as Apple, has made the availability to everyone to have a passkey. Your phone right now has a passkey. Apple installed all phones around the world by November 31st. Every Apple phone has a passkey. Every Android phone has a passkey. And by the end of this month, February, Google will have also finished passkeys, and Microsoft did at the end of January. So the ability is there. And basically, a passkey is simply that. Now, I could sit here and take up a lot of time explaining to you how a passkey works and what it does and all the particulars about it. But if you go to my website, which is just my name, abagnale.com, it's just my last name.com, the first thing you'll find on my homepage is a one-page sheet I wrote about passkeys. It explains in simple understanding how it works and what it is. At the end of that page, I gave you a link to Apple's engineers, 30-minute video. You don't have to watch the 30 minutes because the first 10 minutes are strictly showing you how you use a passkey. And the rest of it is for your company or law firm to install passkeys in their firm so their attorneys have access to everything through a passkey. Passkeys will do away with ransomware. They'll do away with a tremendous amount of breaches. It's a new technology. It's been vetted by the best companies in the world and has been used. So the second largest bank in America wanted to be one of those companies that vetted it. So they allowed their customers to use a passkey at their 4,000 branches across the United States for 1 year for the sole purpose of opening a new account. So when you came in, you didn't say, fill out this form, put all your information on it. You just used your phone. And at the end of that year, that bank published a report and said it saved them $70 million in new accounts fraud. $70 million in just new accounts fraud, because that's all they used it for, was opening accounts. So you go to Amazon, you press your thumb down on your phone, and you're in. There's no sign in. There's no password. You're in. You have a passkey in your phone. Now, in that one page, I also gave you the link to one of the platforms, which is TrueSona, stands for True Persona. I did that because they have a Q&A that I don't care if you're the most sophisticated IT guy in the world, or you're just somebody who asked a question, what if I left it on the table, as that person just did moments ago, and forgot it, someone picked it up. They explained to you how that works. That's not a concern. So when you have a moment, read that one page, because that technology is fast coming, already used by financial institutions, corporations already. There are about 9 platform companies that provide the platform for that firm to use it, but to install it is a simple thing to do. Once the company has it, everyone in that company has a passkey. I'm not on social media. I've never been on social media. I'm not on LinkedIn. I'm not on Twitter. Never been on any type of social media. I do believe that probably not in my lifetime, but there will come a day that we realize that will have been a bad experiment. But in the meantime, I tell people all the time, if you tell me on Facebook where you were born and your date of birth, that's 98% of the information I need to steal your identity. Identity thieves only use 3 keys. You just gave them 2. So I remind young people all the time, you never want to tell anyone on social media where you were born or your date of birth. Otherwise, you might as well just say, come steal my identity. So when they do those high-speed searches you've heard about going through the Facebook pages, they know when those information is either false or you just deleted it, and when it's accurate, and you're just opening yourself to be a target. Of course, we tell everybody everything far beyond our place of birth and date of birth. I only have a few apps on my phone. People sometimes see me open my phone and go, that's it for your apps? Well, yes, because if I want to know what I look like in the mirror, I go to the restroom and look. I don't need an app to tell me that, because every app has a reason. Every single app is designed for a purpose. That's why it's free. One of my favorite, Face app, 2 years ago. Free. Of course, you had to read the agreement. It was 3 pages long, tiny print, so you scrolled through it because it was free. And then you got to the bottom, you said, I agree. And Face app said, show me a picture of you at 19, and I'll show you what you'll look like when you're 60. Show me a picture of you at 30, and I'll show you what you look like when you're 70. 80 million Americans signed up for that app. No one read the agreement. I did. I took 1 paragraph out of the 3 pages. I'll read it because you're way in the back. FaceApp's terms and conditions grant the company based in Russia a perpetual, irrevocable, non-exclusive, royalty-free, worldwide, fully paid, transferable license to use, reproduce, modify, adapt, publish, and display your image. Which translated, the Russians have 80 million Americans biometrics. So that 19-year-old goes in the Marines at 24, they'll know exactly what he looks like. Every app has a purpose, whether it's surveillance, whether it's marketing, there's a purpose behind the app. The question is, do I really need the app, and what is the purpose of that app? And I won't even get into TikTok, which eventually the government is going to shut down. It is a national concern of the government and should be done, and they will do it. Forbes magazine for over 10 years has published this stat. I put it on my slide program every year. When I first did, it was 5% of US companies, 3% reject. Now, at the end of 22, 70% of employees review social media sites and 54% reject candidates based on what they saw or they read. Well, of course. If the government was going to hire you tomorrow and they go to your Facebook page, there's a picture of you nude on the beach with a bunch of drug paraphernalia all over your body and wine bottles, no, they're probably not going to hire you. If you're 13 years old, you make a racial slur because you're 13 years old and you don't know any better, your employer will read it when you're 22 years old. If you say something at 14 about someone's sexual orientation because you don't know any better, your school of admissions or your employer will read it. So I tell young people all the time, what you post, what you say on Facebook stays on Facebook. You can delete it. You can erase it. You can close your Facebook account. It's there. Whatever goes up in the cloud comes back from the cloud. So I tell young people, before you post, before you make a statement, make sure you ask yourself, do I want someone to read this or see this picture 5 years from now, 10 years from now? 2.7 billion hits, that's what Facebook gets every day. I like this car, I like this hotel, I like this airline. They compile them, and in 6 months they know your gender, your age, your sexual orientation, your voting record, your IQ, your religion, your politics, whether you smoke, whether you use drugs, whether you use alcohol. Now, you've seen on YouTube, I go out to Facebook and Google many times during the year to speak to their security and privacy team. This is them telling me this. This is what they do. Why would you want anyone to know all those things about you? You see, we complain that people steal our identity, but we turn right around and tell them everything about us. In the old days, you sat on your computer screen on your PC and this scrolled by. You couldn't stop it. It was a scroll. At a very slow pace, you bought line items. Driver's license, mother's maiden name, social security number, security code on the back of the credit card number, bank account number, driver's license number, whatever it was, compiling an identity. Well, technology changed all that because today we have the dark web. And the dark web is a lot like an ocean. The deeper you go in the ocean, the more sensitive the information, and just a handful of people have access to it, and those people are well vetted that have access to it. Now, I would be remiss if I left this without telling you how to protect yourself from identity theft. And I would ask you to do nothing more than I do myself. So first of all, I shred everything, because what you believe to be a worthless piece of paper, to someone else it's of great value. So there are literally just 3 shredders built in the world. Oh, sure, there's hundreds of manufacturers, Office Depot, Staples, Fellows, foreign manufacturers, but just 3 types. There's a straight shredder called a ribbon shredder, cuts paper straight up and down. At the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, they put those back in less than 30 minutes. Many of you use a crisscross shredder. Much better, cuts paper down to a little rectangular box, like so. But the Bureau uses a software called ePuzzler that allows them to put that back together in a very short period of time, as they did in Enron, WorldCom, Tyco, Arthur Andersen. Even though the auditors had shredded bags of documents, they put them back together for evidence. So when you go to the store, it's not a matter of who made it, and it's not a matter of price, because they're all basically the same price. It's a matter of what type of shredder is it. And you're looking on the box for the words security, micro, cut shredder. Now that's a shredder that turns paper into confetti, about the size of a piece of rice. There is no technology to put back together. If you put your credit card in your shredder, it only slices it in 4 slices. If I pick it out of the mail, I put them on a table, I push them together, I have the card. You put it there, you wouldn't be able to tell me if it's a Saks Fifth Avenue card or a TD Bank card. You wouldn't know. Using the right tool to do the right job. So if your purpose is to destroy it because you're protecting your client's information, then you use the right shredder. Freeze your credit. Up until 2 years ago, only 9 states allowed you to freeze your credit. All the rest charged you a fee. $10 to freeze it, $15 to unfreeze it, $10 to freeze it back again. 3 times, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, 3 bureaus. So people said, I'm not paying all that money. And elderly folks said, way too confusing. I don't even understand it. So the government stepped in, Congress passed a law prohibiting credit bureaus from charging you a fee to freeze your credit. The government said it's your right to freeze your credit if you're 16 years of age or older. I would have preferred they said 1 or older, but they said 16. Once you freeze your credit, which is a one-time event, you simply go to the Google box and type in, how do I freeze my credit? That's it. All 3 bureaus frozen. No one can see your credit. Not the government, not your bank, not your insurance company, not your employer. No one without your permission. This weekend you decide to buy a car. You say to the dealer, look, I'd like to buy this car. I want to finance it for 3 years, but I want the best rate. Well, I send it out to 8 banks we work with. See who gives us the best rate. But I need you to unfreeze your credit so I can do that. So I unfreeze it. He gets me the best rate. I sign the contract. My credit's frozen back where it was. Everybody should freeze their credit, especially if you're 16. You have no use for your credit at 16. Or if you're 78, you own your house, you own your car, you have your credit cards, you don't need your credit, freeze it. Why would you want someone to access it without your permission? Now, I froze my credit a long time ago, but I still use a credit monitoring service, and there are a lot of them out there. I've used one since the year 2000. I don't know what they charge me, $14 a month, something like that on my credit card. The reason I do it, I truly believe you take responsibility for yourself. I don't rely on the government to protect me. I don't rely on the bank to protect me. I don't rely on the police to protect me. I rely on myself. So for $14 a month, I can open my laptop anywhere, anytime, 25 times a day, check my credit. A few keys, and up in front of my screen comes all 3 credit reports right in front of me: Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. At the top is my credit score for that moment of that day in real time. Then I can scroll through my credit, which most of the time it's not accurate, there's always a mistake, and I see a car note I paid off a year ago, but it says I still owe $3,000. I can fix that. And when I go to the bottom of the report, I see all inquiries being made against my credit. Inquiries from the bank, inquiries from my employer, inquiries from my credit card company, insurance company. If it's something suspicious, I can do something about it. Yeah, all the rest of the stuff, I'll notify you if somebody's using your Social Security number, I'll notify you have a resolution program. That's just all extra stuff. So when I look for a credit monitoring service, I ask only one question: do you have access to all 3 bureaus? Oh no, we just do Experian. That won't help me. Do you allow me to check my credit as often as I want, 50 times a day? Those are my 2 questions. I need all 3 bureaus. I need access to them anytime, any minute, any second of the day, so I can control my own credit. I don't write a lot of checks anymore, obviously, but I'm a little old-fashioned. I still write a check to pay my mortgage, or write a check to pay my insurance company. But what about when you go to the grocery store and you write a check for $9? You hand the clerk the check. On the check is your name and address, your bank's name and address, your bank, your account number at your bank, your routing number into your account, that's your wiring instructions, your signature on the signature card at the bank, and the clerk has written your driver's license number on the front and your date of birth. You don't get that check back. We live in truncation. You get an image of the check. Anyone who would see the face of that check can do an account takeover. They can draft on your bank account, or simply go to checksinthemail.com, and up on your screen comes hundreds of checks. And you can pick whatever style, whatever background you want to match that check, and order 200 of them, and write checks off of that person's account. This is why we arrest people all the time where they simply said to the clerk in the store who's 17, look kid, here's all you got to do. When somebody writes a check to the store, I don't care what the amount is, if the check says wealth management, private banking account, mutual funds, all I want you to do is take a postum and write the information on the check on the postum. Do not steal the check. Put the check in the register. Give me the postum or email me the postum, give you $100. Give me 5 postums, give you $500. That's simple. So I'm very careful about who and where I write checks in today's environment. Debit versus credit. Now you've seen me on MSNBC and many financial networks over the years. I've written many subject articles about it. I don't own a debit card. I've never owned a debit card. I have 3 grown sons married with a family. They don't own a debit card. A long time ago, I asked myself a simple question. I was finishing a book and I said, what is the safest form of payment that exists in the United States? And the answer was credit card. Not credit debit card, credit card. Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover Card. Every day of my life, I spend their money. I never spend 1 dime of my money. No one knows where it is because it's never exposed to anyone. I go to the grocery store, I give them my credit card. Go to the cleaner, I give them my credit card. Got on the plane to come here this morning, gave them my credit card. Now, I will do everything in my power to make sure no one gets my number, but if they do, and tomorrow they charge $1 million on my credit card, by federal law, my liability is 0. I have no liability. I buy an expensive camera online, the camera comes broken, UPS says we didn't break it, the merchant says I'm not refunding it, credit card company makes me whole. During COVID, I got online to a false site, ordered stuff, never came, they took my money, credit card company makes me whole. I had a man emailed me just a few weeks ago, took his girlfriend to Acapulco, gave her a wedding ring he bought at a jewelry store there to get engaged, brought it back. She wanted to have something mounted on it, and the jeweler said, "This is fake." He paid $5,000. He called me in a panic. I said, "Well, how'd you pay for it?" "My Visa card." I called Visa. And called next day, said to me, "Visa reimbursed my money." Of course, because Visa said to the merchant, either make it good or lose your privilege. When you use your debit card, you expose your money every time you take it out of your wallet, your account. You could use your debit card 20 times a day for 20 years, and your credit score won't move that much. No relation. Now, we have a lot of people who need to be on a debit card because they're not good at handling money, and they should be on a debit card. But we have a lot of young people who do it simply for the word of convenience. So they go to college for 4 years, use their debit card, they graduate, get a great job at the law firm, they go down to rent an apartment, and the leasing agent, "Son, you don't have any credit. Actually, you don't have a credit file with the credit bureau. So there's no way I can lease you the place. You have to have your parents co-sign the lease." So I had 3 sons. They went off to college. I said to them, "I'm not giving you a debit card. I applied for a credit card in your name. So it's your card. Of course, you have no credit, so I guaranteed it." Which means 3 things. 1, the bill comes to me every month, and I'm responsible for the bill. So if you're spending a lot of time in a bar, I'm going to know it because I'll pay the bill. 2, I set the limit. You're going to school in China, that's your limit. You're going to school in Nevada, that's your limit. You're going to school in Kansas, that's your limit. And every month that I pay the bill goes on your credit. When you come out of college, you'll have a score of probably 800. You want to buy a car, buy a house, rent an apartment. My oldest son is an FBI agent, been in the Bureau for 17 years. He's the Bureau's chief, unit chief over the Crisis Negotiations Unit of the Bureau. He started his career in Baltimore, where he spent 10 years, and he ended up there as over the counterintelligence unit in Baltimore. But when he went there, he was raised and brought up in Oklahoma, where I raised my 3 sons in the same house for 25 years. When he married his wife and had a child and went to Baltimore, homes were 5 times the price of homes in Oklahoma. But he had incredible credit. 4 years of college, 3 years of law school. He was able to do that on his own. One of the things you can do, and best thing you can do for your child, is to teach them the importance of credit and earning and understanding how important credit is today. This is not 30 years ago, do I get the house, do I get the car? Everything today is based on your personal credit. You go to work for someone, they check your credit. You apply for auto insurance, they check your credit. Apply for life insurance, they check your credit. I get hired to do consulting work, they check my credit. Everything is based on your credit. So maintaining good credit is very important. Teaching young people to do so is very, very important. You set the limit on that card, but each time it's paid reflects on them and goes a long way to the importance of them having good credit. Now, I get the big question is, how do I get cash? I ask my bank only for an ATM card, not an ATM debit card, just an ATM card. That way I can get money anywhere in the world, but I'm protected by the same laws that protect my credit card. And if it's a small little community bank in Wichita and they say, we only do ATM debit cards, that's okay. But on the debit side of that card, make my exposure no more than $1. So my exposure is never greater than $1. And if you're using any of those financial services, Venmo, Zelle, etc., make sure, please, please, that you are backing that with a credit card. Do not back that with a bank account number. Do not back that with a debit card. Those are cash transactions. Once you lose the money, you lost it. So I send you a text, you send me the money, it's gone. We had your credit card backed it, you'd go to your credit card company, get your money. Ironically, we're hearing a lot in the news today about PPP loans and unemployment insurance, how the government was ripped off. I wrote this op-ed in March of 2020. This is a government wire. It goes to every federal agency in the United States. I wrote it before the pandemic. I knew the government was going to disperse those loans, so I said, this is how much money will go to fraud. People said, well, that's out of the world. No, it wasn't out of the world. Because for the last 50 years, anytime the government disperses money, whether it's for FEMA, hurricane, national disaster, a minimum of 10% goes out the door to fraud. So it wasn't hard to predict. Medicare, 10% is fraud. Of the $800 billion budget, 10% is fraud, consistently. So the federal government gave $860 billion to 50 states for unemployment insurance, and the first thing they stipulated, you're not liable for any fraud. So the state said, whoa, well, I got to go hire some people, because in the state of New Hampshire, only 3 people work there, unemployment office. So they had to hire 100. In the state of Washington, they couldn't hire enough, so the National Guard came in and worked with them. They were paying every single claim. Nobody checked anything. You were rated on how fast you approved it. And the Inspector General in June of last year said so far he's up to $68 billion in fraud. Ironically, mostly Nigerian scams, foreign actors, and ironically, government employees. Government employees. We're not even talking PPP. We're talking just unemployment insurance, $86 billion. That is just absurd. How many houses, how many homes, how many places could you feed, how many schools could you improve and build if you had $86 billion to do it with? And that's just one minor part of the fraud losses. If we look at all the fraud losses, tax fraud is $381 billion at the end of 2022. Improper payments were $281 billion, and COVID-19 fraud has exceeded $100 billion. Total, so far, $762 billion, or bigger than the national defense budget of our country, to criminals who don't even live in this country. That's just absolutely absurd. So people ask me all the time, who do you trust more with your money, the bank or the government? The bank. Because my bank can't afford to take those losses. My bank has to spend billions of dollars on technology. They have to vet the technology. Chase Bank spends over $500 million a year on technology, and every piece of technology is vetted at a minimum of 3 years before it's ever put in the marketplace on that ATM or wherever it's used. The government is using systems antiquated back from the 70s. There is nobody to repair them because they're all dead who knows how to do any types of repairs or updates on them. So instead of hiring thousands of auditors, we need to go update the system, update the computers. In Alabama, they finished that audit just at the end of this January, 2023, and over $11 million was paid to inmates in the same prison for unemployment. They were in prison, serving time, but they received $11 million in benefits in the state of Alabama, just that state. Absurd. I had the opportunity to work with AARP for 5 years as a consultant. That was unique for me because I've spent my entire career with crimes against governments, corporations, and financial institutions. So then switching to consumer crimes was kind of an eye-opener. I realized quickly that $37 billion is stolen every year from the elderly and veterans. They lose their life savings, they lose their homes, they lose their pensions. And on average, every single day in the United States, 7 days a week, 10,000 Americans turn 65 years of age. During the pandemic, we saw that triple because people sat in front of their computer, fell for every scam that possibly could come across the internet. Romance scams tripled. So, at the end of it, 5 years, I thought I better write a book about what I learned. So I wrote the book. Random House published it. Of course, the publisher always titles it themselves. You don't have any say in the title. And they called it Scam Me If You Can. I donated all the money from the book, the royalties, the advance, to AARP. That's why their logo's on it, so that they could use that money to help educate their 31 million members. 400 pages, I looked at every single scam there was. Scams against millennials, scams against seniors, Bitcoin scams, cryptocurrency scams, financial bank scams, insurance scams, 400 pages. Each 2 pages, I said, here's the scam, here's what they'll say to you, this is what they'll text to you, and at the end, I gave you a little quiz. to make sure you remembered what I said. Grandparent scam, the sweepstakes scam, the IRS scam, whatever it was. And when I finished the book, I learned two things. One, millennials are scammed far more often than seniors. But seniors lose more money because they have more money to lose. And two, that no matter how sophisticated the scam was, and I wrote about some very sophisticated ones, to no matter how amateur the scam was, two red flags. One of those flags has to show up, or the scam can't work. And the first red flag is, I need the money right now. Mrs. Jones, give me your bank account number, give me your credit card number. Take your cell phone, stay on the phone, don't hang up, get in your car, go down to Walmart, purchase a Green Dot card, put the money on it, stay on the phone. When you get in the parking lot, read me the number on the back of the card. Has to be right this minute. That is a red flag. And the second red flag is at some point I'm going to ask you for information. So in a romance scam, we have somebody, 76-year-old woman, she lost her husband, she has no children, she's lonely, she meets someone on the internet. Nicest man in the world. For a year, he calls her, he sends her emails, he sends her flowers. Never asks for anything. That's because he's working 50 other women, and she'll rotate around to her. He usually waits for you to ask something. So she finally says, so Robert, let me ask you, you live just 2 states away, why don't you come see me? Well, Helen, I would, but I have to have this operation, and I don't have the money, nor the insurance. So if I don't have it, I don't know that I'm going to make it. Well, how much is it? $30,000. Well, I could loan you that money. You don't know this person. You didn't solicit the email. You didn't solicit the relationship. You didn't solicit the call. And finally, the scariest thing I learned writing this book is that some scam artists are so good, they put the victim under the ether. And once you're under the ether, there's no coming back. And that's the mother where the daughter's standing there and says to her mom, Mom, this is a scam, so I brought you this FBI agent. He arrested this guy 3 times before. He has all of his information right here. He's done this scam over and over and took money from people. He's scamming you. You know what? You don't know what you're saying because he really likes me and we're friends and he wouldn't do that to me. They're under the ether. And once they're under the ether, there's no going back. So I did 4 videos, 3 minutes each, and put them on my website. They're very well done. Simply explains what I considered the 4 most common scams: the grandparent scam, the IRS scam, the sweepstakes scam. And I basically, if you have someone you know that's elderly, or you have a neighbor who's elderly, a relative, have them watch it. Because once you watch it, after 3 minutes, you go, well, I never fall for that. Because you know exactly how it works. Back to education. All I did is make it very visual so you can see it. They watch it, they say, I got it, I totally understand how it works. When they get that call, when they get that email, they'll understand it. It's on the homepage of my website, and you'll find it a few stops down, and you just click on it, the 4 videos are there. For over 17 years, I published this bulletin. Many law firms use it for in-house purposes. It's free, it's online. This one just was published 2 months ago for the year 23. Everything in it is current. It covers every single thing you want to know: cybercrime, embezzlement, identity theft, forged endorsements, counterfeit checks, every single thing, 32 pages, everything is there. So when you go back and you look at it, you might say, I don't need all this, but I like these 4 pages, I'm going to take those. You just download them. Or you can download the whole bulletin. But if you say, I'd like to have some of these for my clients or people in the firm, so I'd like to get 10 hard copies, 50 hard copies, you just go to abagnale.com, we'll pay the postage, and we'll send you the 32-page booklets. There's no charge whether you're getting 500 or you're getting 10. We'll send them to you. It has great information in it. It should be in every accounting office, every bookkeeper's office. And of course, it's great because we do have case studies in there on liability laws involving forged checks, alterations, etc. Who's liable, the bank, the customer. All that is in the 32-page booklet. That's my website. It's just my name.com. I'd be happy to take some questions now before we close. And again, you can ask whatever question you like if someone has a question. If somebody has a microphone, they're bring it around.
I don't think I need the mic.
No, it's great acoustics in it.
So that was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Off the topic, from Portchester, New York, 10 miles from New Rochelle, 20 miles from the Bronx, the movie.
Yes.
Close to reality, or did the producer or director fly way off the park?
Well, two things. First of all, they said I was from New Rochelle. I'm not from New Rochelle. I was raised in Bronxville, New York, a neighboring town of New Rochelle. Steven Spielberg obviously had never made a movie about a real person living, so he was very careful to hide my date of birth. When he changed the driver's license, he didn't use my real birth date. He made sure he didn't say where I was actually from in that city. But after the movie came out, I had the Chamber of Commerce in New Rochelle calling me, you all have to come. I said, no, I don't live in New Rochelle. I never lived in New Rochelle. So that went. The movie was based on a book written by a ghostwriter who actually wrote the book. I felt that he exaggerated a lot of the things I did. He had done it from an article, a magazine article he wrote about me in 1977. The article was very popular, so he turned around and developed a book. I was paid to have my name put on the book. The publisher put a very strong disclaimer on the front page of the book. The book has never been out of print. It's in 39 languages, but the disclaimer has always been there about names, places, events, things that happen to change. I thought he took everything to the level I did it, and then he took it one higher level than that. The French prisons were very bad, but he made them worse than they actually were. I impersonated a pilot. I never flew a plane, rode on planes in the cockpit. I impersonated a doctor, though I didn't have a medical license, and I never actually practiced medicine in a hospital. I impersonated a lawyer in Louisiana, but I never actually was a lawyer, or did I pass the bar and practice law in Louisiana. Everything was one step higher. So he took the book, and then Steven Spielberg took it, and he told the story the way he wanted to tell the story. I never saw a script. I was not involved in the film whatsoever. And he told the story the way he wanted to tell the story. And then Broadway took it and said, well, let's put some music to it, make it a Broadway musical. And they changed the story, and they told the story. So a lot of that, I thought that he stayed as close as he could to this true story, but unfortunately, Hollywood and people get a little carried away with their stories. Any other questions? Yes?
So if everything is hackable, how come you believe a passkey won't be hackable? If it's literally on your phone and you can just point it at an ATM machine or whatever, you know,
Yes.
electronic medium you find, why is that not hackable?
It's when you read that one page and you listen to the engineers at Apple, they vetted it for 4 years. The once in a lifetime security looked at every possible scenario when they developed the passkey. And there are 4 levels to that passkey. So if I'm a CFO wiring $30 million through Bank of America to a client, I use that level 4 of that passkey. If I'm a consumer simply going to my ATM machine or checking in with Amazon to order something, I'd be at level 1 of that passkey. Nothing is foolproof, but I do believe this is far, far better than passwords. What took so long is you had to get FIDO and all of these government regulations to say, yes, this passkey can do away with passwords. And that took every financial institution, everyone to simply say, these are now the standards for the replacement of the password. And it took Google and Microsoft, everyone to sign up, but by the end of February, Google will be the last one, and it will be passwords on your phone. So it's available now. Keep in mind that Apple doesn't sell the password. Apple makes no money from the the passkey. It is strictly the platform company, because if I'm a law firm and I say, you know, I'd like to have this passkey so all my lawyers, no matter where they are in the world, when they access our records, I know it's them on the other end of that device, you have to have that platform. And the company that has the platform is who you pay a fee to use that service. And TrueSona is one of those companies. I like their website because it has a great deal of information about answering your questions about your phone. But it's long overdue. I'm glad it's here. If you totally understand it once you read the page and you watch that little video, and if you're an IT at your firm, it'll tell you how you would use that platform and how you'd install that platform. Again, that's a very simple thing to do. It's not a major deal to do it. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
The two
The what, Troy?
Which mouse are you, the first mouse or the second?
That was a story of my father. My father told that story, and Steven Spielberg loved that story, so he used it in the film.
Incredible. Yeah, I just love it.
Yeah.
So you turned the motor, right?
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
My children are always like, Venmo, Zelle. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thing with Venmo, Zelle, any of those, you just want to make sure you're backing that with a credit card because, for example, my daughter-in-law said that she had a friend and would I speak to her on the phone a few weeks ago, and the friend said, I got a text message, supposedly from Bank of America. It said it was okay for me to pay this. So I paid it. It was $3,000. Bank said they never sent me the text message. They don't know anything about it. It was through Venmo, and now lost my money. Bank says that was a cash transaction. We have no responsibility. It wasn't I that sent you the text. Now, she backed it off her bank account, so her only liability was her account, her money. Had she had it backed by a credit card, she'd have turned to the credit card company, and they would have reimbursed her that money. So that's why if I'm going to use one of those services, I would be backing it with a credit card, not a debit card and not a bank account number. Any other questions?
Frank, I want to ask this the last question for you. We've all seen the movie, we have a million questions about it and about your life, but the overarching question is, what turned your life around?
Well, I know that when I get asked that question, I know that people want me to say I was born again, I saw the light, prison rehabilitated me. I don't think I was any different the man that went into prison that came out of prison. As you know, I was arrested in France, served time in the French prisons. When my sentence was over, I was extradited to Sweden. I served time in the Swedish prisons. When that sentence was over, I was extradited back to the United States. And a U.S. federal judge in Atlanta sentenced me to 12 years in federal prison. I served about 3 of those years in a federal prison in Petersburg, Virginia. When I was about 26 years old, the government said to me, after they had turned me down for parole twice, said to me the third time, we'd consider setting you on parole under 2 conditions. One, you live in a city of our choice, where normally you would go back to where you were from, New York. And second, you will have to spend 1 day a week educating federal law enforcement officers. And for this, there would be no compensation. It's part of your parole. You don't have to do it, but it's for consideration of parole. So I said, no, I'll do it. So they sent me to Houston, Texas, where I'd never been before. And I basically went down to Houston, and my parole officer said to me, you know, you're going to have to find a job. You have to support yourself. So I went and got a job at Pizza Inn, making pizza. And then they made me an assistant manager at that store. So every night I'd go make the night deposit. And then one day they said to me, we'd like to put you in our management training program so you can run a store. They found out about my record and they fired me. So I got a job driving the bus from downtown Houston out to the Intercontinental Airport. The company's called Air Host, big Greyhound MC5 buses. And I figured nobody bothered me doing this. They found out about my record and they fired me. So I got a job at a grocery store chain called Wine Gardens in Houston. And on the midnight to 8 shift out in Stafford, Texas, which is a suburb of Houston, stocking groceries, midnight to 8. And eventually the store said, I'd like to make you the night manager so that you run the stockers and the 2 tellers, 12 to 8. And I did that and put a lot of money in the bank every morning. But then they decided to put me in their management training program, which I asked them not to do, but they did. And they found out about my record and they fired me. So I said to my parole officer, listen, my name is not Smith or Jones, it's Abagnale. And anyone with my name, anyone, is related to me. They're a third cousin, an uncle, whether I ever met them or not, they're related to me somehow. So I can't hide what I did. So my question to you is, if you send me every week to train these federal law enforcement officers, why can't I go out and talk to retailers, banks, merchants, and educate them? He said, you know what? I actually like that idea. However, you cannot leave Harris County. So go ahead and see what happens. My first was to speak at a Target store on the Katy Freeway in Houston, Texas, to the loss prevention manager said, yeah, I'll let you come in. I said, it's very simple. If I leave here in an hour and you haven't learned anything, don't pay me. Well, he learned a lot, so he called the next Target store, who called the next Target store. Same thing, one bank after another bank, and for 47 years, everything I'd done is by referral. Someone told someone else. My parole ended after 5 years on parole. And when my parole ended, the government said, we'd like you to stay on. We'll compensate you to help educate federal law enforcement officers. I said, you know, I don't really want to do that for a living. But I said, I owe you an obligation. I wouldn't be where I am today had it not been for this reason. And what I do, I think, is worthwhile. So I will continue to do that, but I don't want to be paid for it. And I'll go on and make my living going out educating other people. I have associated with the FBI for 47 years. I commute up to Quantico. I live in Charleston. And I go out to every field office, 56 of them, for in-service training of our agents in the field. To this day, 47 years later, I have never accepted one dime in compensation from the federal government, and including reimbursement for travel. I cover my own travel. When you go to my homepage, I'm very honored, you will see that 3 weeks ago in Charlotte, North Carolina, the FBI gave me the first ever Lifetime Achievement Award by the FBI for my life's work with the Bureau, which has always been without compensation. But that didn't change my life. When I was working in that store, I met a young lady, and she was just finishing her master's degree at the University of Houston, and I asked her out. I was an assistant store manager in a store. I realized after a couple of dates that I really, really liked her. And I eventually realized I had to be honest with her. So on the third date, I told her that this is who I really am. I'm on federal parole. I can go back to prison any day. I have no money other than the money I get paid in the store, and I don't know if they'll fire me tomorrow. But eventually I asked her to marry me, and against the wishes of her parents, she did. She changed my life. Everything I have, everything I've done, everything I've achieved because of love of a woman. Married to my wife for 47 years, 7 grandchildren, 3 sons. She turned my life around. But here's the real answer to that story that I had to share with my own sons just a few weeks ago, because I'm approaching 75. And I said to them, when I look back on my life, I have a lot of regrets. But when I look back on my life, I really wish that Weingarten's had said to me, you know what? Okay, you told us about your record. We understand it. But we still like to put you in our training program. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, fine. I would have lived that life and been much happier than the life I ended up living. I would have loved to have retired as a manager of a store, had my wife, had my children, lived in a small house in Texas, but it would have been a much better life than notoriety, fame, and where my life went, because I had to reinvent myself and take it where I took it. I wish I could have gone back and someone had given me that opportunity. I'd have been a much happier person. I would have lived a much happier life. It's been a pleasure being with you. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.